Are you ready to unleash your creative razzle-dazzle? Then join the Canary Cry new stock producers and make some refrigerator art for the show. Show your support with your talent at canarycry.party. Your mom will thank you.
Razzle Dazzle, it's Body by Basil, the new exciting fitness craze that will get you Canary Cry swole in no time at all. Just listen to these quotes from our participants. My muscles are huge. It's all or Nephilim. You'll be an apocalypse warlord in no time. Don't wait. Order today and save 33% for just 4 easy payments of only $33.33. You too can have the body of a googly eye VR headset wearing Nephilim warlord.
A new, raw deconstruction of news and analysis. Introducing Canary Cry New Stalk, the new intense fragrance made specifically for thinking outside the cage. From your favorite podcasters, Basil and Goms.
Gons, can you hear me? I'm hearing reports about a prototype FLIPPY arm.
Don't tell me. FLIPPY is coming for our jobs.
That's right. You know what this means.
Yeah, it's wake-up time. Think outside the cage.
The world is getting crazier. People are acting more and more insane. The end of the world is tomorrow. Tomorrow. There's only one thing to do when the world is falling apart. Listen to Basil and Gonz as they discuss this week's news and events through the lens of Bible prophecy. You are listening to Canary Cry News Talk.
You are listening to Canary Cry News Talk. It is May 1st, May Day. Episode 737, I'm saying that wrong. Dodecahedronocalypse. Wow, I really butchered that head title there. My name is Gonz, director of the Age of Deceit films, your favorite Asian provocateur for Christ, live to tape from the land of Newscomb to bring you the best news, which is the gospel message of Jesus Christ, while reporting the egregious with a well-rounded, biblically grounded take on world events. And yes, Basil is out again today. He's got some important meetings that he needs to attend that have to do with the passing of our friend that passed away last week, the aftermath. So continue to pray for him. And he'll be back when he can be and catch up on everything. But the show must go on, so we will just move right along here. It is May Day, May 1st, which means the Illuminati being founded by Adam Weishaupt in 1776. This is a historical fact. Most people who look into the Illuminati might come across this information. We use it a lot more colloquially now. Man, I'm really just butchering my words. Today, where we say Illuminati, we mean maybe the elite, maybe it's not specific, but there was a specific group called the Illuminati, founded by Adam Weishaupt, the Order of the Illuminati in Bavaria back in the 1700s. They were actually, as the story goes, they were kicked out of Bavaria for being, a secret society, and perhaps they found their way into the Americas. But that's one thing. The other thing, and it's really unfortunate that Basil couldn't be here today, because today is Razzle Dazzle Basil Day. And it's a bummer that Basil couldn't be here on 7:33 as well as 7:37, which happens to be May 1st, which happens to be Razzle Dazzle Basil Day. So we'll have to do a late celebration of that maybe next episode when he's back. But let's go through. Oh, we need to do a little disclaimer because I don't want the censorship folks to come down on us too hard.
It's time for a disclaimer.
Now listen up, YouTube.
That's right, and just for all the content moderators and censorship managers out there, be they robots or humans, everything you hear on this show comes directly from the mainstream corporate news media. We do not claim to be experts on healthcare, geopolitics, military strategy, corporate law, or the moral and ethical implications of any of these topics, nor do we implicitly or explicitly support or subscribe to any sources or narratives containing misinformation, disinformation, or malinformation, as defined by the Department of Homeland Security. We're good boys. All right, YouTube, we're good boys.
Yep, and let's do a quick rundown.
Oh, look, here's Basil.
Let me bring you up to speed.
We're going to start off with a story about how a Roman object has baffled experts. It's a dodecahedron, an ancient dodecahedron, and we'll get into the implications of that and maybe some biblical references that might help us contextualize some of this. And then we're going to talk about CRISPR. CRISPR is getting an AI upgrade. Of course, we've been keeping track of both of those things and seeing them come together. It was inevitable. But also Mammoth Biosciences, which is the group that is founded by Doudna, who was the inventor of CRISPR, or one of the early developers of CRISPR. They land a new license for a new type of CRISPR protein, and we'll talk about that. It's not Cas9 anymore. It's Casɸ. And then The Atlantic wrote this story, the sci-fi writer who invented conspiracy theory. So The Atlantic, going into the origins of the conspiracy theory, a science fiction author. We'll see how that The Atlantic highlights this and brings this knowledge to the forefront of the mainstream. And we'll also look at how some of the psychological operations are working on the ground, boots on the ground. You have all these universities going insane with students rioting, violence erupting. And we'll talk a little bit about that and what the implications are there. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about how 90% of polar birds, those are birds in Antarctica, have microplastics inside of them. It's really unfortunate. But we're going to kick it off here with our lead story.
Speaking of the beast system, beast system, it's got to be biblical.
So the BBC published an article titled "Roman Object That Baffled Experts Go on Show at Lincoln Museum." And for those of you watching, it's a dodecahedron. It's got some, it's like a sculpture. Well, we'll read about it here. A mysterious Roman artifact found during an amateur archaeological dig is going on public display in Lincolnshire for the first time. The object is one of only 33 dodecahedrons found in Britain. Of course.
33 is the number of completion of the Great War.
Of course some amateurs are going to find one of the 33 dodecahedrons found in Britain. I can't make this up, folks. And the first to have been discovered in the Midlands. It was found in Norton Disney near Lincoln in the summer of 2023. The artifact is also one of the largest found, measuring about 3 inches tall and weighing about 8 ounces. The 12-sided object was unearthed by a group of local volunteers. Richard Parker, secretary of the Norton Disney History and Archaeology Group, said it was, quote, "a privilege to have handled," end quote, the object, thought to have been buried about 1,700 years ago. However, he said, quote, "despite all the research that has gone into our dodecahedron and others like it, we are no closer to finding out exactly what it is and what it might have been used for." This is the perfect setup right here for all the tracking we've been doing with the official, master's degree in education of the occult that we're starting to see develop, not just in the UK, where I think it was Exeter University that had the actual master's degree in magic, and I forget the exact name. Was it magic and sorcery, something like that? Magic and the occult. And we knew that they're going to need practitioners, or at least people that are knowledgeable with this information, to start trickling into the mainstream to explain things. And this is a perfect example. And I think we might have even mentioned at the time when we were covering that stuff, I don't know, 50 episodes ago or something, how artifacts will be central to this industry, this sort of occult commentary industry that will, be there to explain, this academic apparatus that will help explain strange artifacts or occult artifacts. And this is, I think, a perfect setup for that. Quote, "The imagination races when thinking about what the Romans may have used it for. Magic, rituals, or religion. We perhaps may never know." Quote, "What we do know is the Norton Disney dodecahedron was found on top of a hill in a former large pit of some kind." Was it a mound? A Nephilim mound? "It seems it was deliberately placed there." End quote. The mysterious object date back as far as the 1st century. Some experts believe they were possibly linked to Roman rituals or religion, but there are no references to them in any Roman text. The volunteers plan to return to the area where the dodecahedron was found in the hope of unearthing more clues. The Norton Disney dodecahedron, which, by the way, Norton Disney being spelled exactly like Disneyland. So that's kind of interesting, which featured in a recent episode of the BBC program Digging for Britain, will be on display at Lincoln Museum as part of the city's Festival of History from Saturday. So if you're in the Norton, or I guess in Britain, in the UK, go check this out. Get some boots on the ground report of this dodecahedron. Did you feel some strange energy, when you got near it or something? Alongside the dodecahedron display, visitors can learn more about Lincoln's Roman past and explore other finds unearthed across the city and county. Andrea Martin, exhibitions and interpretations manager at the museum, said having the dodecahedron on show was, quote, "a real coup for local history fans and visitors to the city." She said the festival was also a chance for residents and visitors alike, quote, to discover more about Lincoln's story. Great. So, a little local pitch there for the UK. They need some tourism. How about an occult object? How about this very special dodecahedron? Now, of course, a dodecahedron, a 12-sided die. You can think of like a dice, but just think of it as 12 sides instead of just normally 6. And it's one of these shapes that have all kinds of different interpretations. When you unfold it in 2 dimensions, it forms kind of like a flower petal, where it's 5-sided, and there's 2 pentagons, sort of that touch each other, or 2 flowers that touch each other with a pentagon in the middle, and that's what forms the 12 cells, so to speak. And, there's a lot of different interpretations, occult interpretations of this type of thing. Going back to starting off with the string theory concept. String theory suggests that, there are higher dimensions that are curled up that we can't really see or feel in our 3-dimensional plane, but they exist. And, people have pontificated how the dodecahedron connects to those realms, or is some kind of vehicle to open up those realms or bridge those realms. And you can go back to Plato. Plato actually talked about some of this, higher dimensional stuff. The aether that Plato talked about often was associated with the dodecahedron, which is kind of interesting. When you talk about ether, the sort of unseen realm of information that we can touch and extract information and data from. It kind of sounds like the computing realm. But there is something else that's interesting when it comes to simply the number 12, because this is a 12-sided die. And, there are more occult things. Let me just finish the occult stuff, and then we'll get into the Bible stuff. So sacred geometry, they see a dodecahedron as some kind of, again, perfect geometry that represents, the complexity of the realms, this realm and the higher realm, and that sort of thing. It ties into the New Age mystical type of belief systems that, again, they use these shapes to explain or access higher consciousness. And even in alchemy and occultism throughout history, they've used the dodecahedron as a symbolic, element to represent, being able to change the elements, but also find some kind of perfect harmony with nature. And so those are all occult thinking type of stuff going on with a dodecahedron. And of course, it's just a 12-sided die as well, so there's that. But when it comes to the 12, there are many references. You guys are already itching. There are many references to the number 12 in the Bible, and I'll just list a few here because, I'm not saying that they all have any significance specifically to the dodecahedron, but it is interesting to consider. In Joshua, chapter 4, verse 3, there are 12 stones that are taken out of the midst of the Jordan, which is one for each tribe of Israel, because there are 12 tribes. We know about that. So there's that significance there. Also, when you go to Revelation 21:12, the gates, the pearly gates, as it is known, it says here, it had a great high wall with 12 gates, and at the gates 12 angels, and on the gates the names of the 12 tribes of the sons of Israel were inscribed. Very interesting. They're just interesting stuff with the number 12. And this is verse 12 in Revelation 21, the mirroring effect going on. Also, what else is there? Oh, yeah, Matthew 14:20. There's a couple mirror verses in there as well, I believe. Yeah, Mark 6:43 and Luke 9:17. These all tell the same parable there, where after Jesus feeds the 5,000, the number of baskets that are left with broken pieces and leftover, 12. Matthew 14:20. And they all ate and were satisfied, and they took up 12 baskets full of the broken pieces left over. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. So, yeah, 12 is an important number in the Bible. It represents many things. It represents God's sort of provenance or providence, and just his fingerprint over certain things. And, it's, again, with numbers, I always think of it as, some would say like the language of God or something like that, but really it's, I would say the foundations, right? The fabric of creation represented in the mind, it can be sort of digested in units of numbers. Numbers and letters, and these are things that human minds operate on. We know that animals and stuff, communicate through different means, and sometimes we consider those things as like higher realms or maybe, just different. But it's fascinating that, numbers mean things, especially to occultists and, mystical people that are searching. They're searching so much for meaning that they find themselves attracted to things like this. But then, if they're missing the God component, you can kind of go wherever, and then it becomes about yourself. Like, oh, it's to help me become, talk to my higher conscious being or whatever it might be. So it becomes an inward type of thing. So, that's where the New Agey stuff gets a little anti-biblical, anti-Christian, if you will. So there you go. And I can picture the occult, the people who have the masters in occult and, esoteric type of teachings go on BBC or write an article or an opinion piece or something like that, breaking down the dodecahedron and what kind of rituals were used. And maybe it was secret. It's not written in the text because it wasn't supposed to be written. It was supposed to be passed down through some bloodline that, only knew about the powers of the dodecahedron and their, I don't know, some kind of summoning ability if they bury it in the Nephilim mound or something, wherever they found it. So, yeah, all of it ties to the reenchantment of society. We are being reenchanted today, and it's not just through technology that we have today. It's sort of rediscovering everything from the past in our history through this new mechanism of the internet, this virtual realm, this aether of information that we all tap into to, gain our knowledge. Of course, the Bible talked about knowledge increasing in the end time. So that's no surprise there. It's all part of the days of Noah.
But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be.
I want to keep moving on here and talk a little bit about CRISPR.
CRISPR. Cas9.
And AI.
Artificial intelligence.
He wants to destroy humans?
Okay, I will destroy humans.
And remember Elon.
The danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads by a lot.
Yeah. And remember, Elon said AI is more dangerous than nuclear warheads. So, what can go wrong? GZeroMedia.com headline, CRISPR gets an AI upgrade. Great. Yeah. It's synonymous with CRISPR gets a nuclear warhead upgrade. I'm not going to read through this whole thing here, but just a couple paragraphs to get an idea. CRISPR, the gene editing method that won 2 female scientists the 2020 Nobel Prize in Chemistry, may soon get infused with artificial intelligence. One Northern California startup called Profluent is expected to present its new paper at a gene editing conference next month, which describes its work using AI to analyze biological data and create new gene editing systems. Yes, I mean, we've been kind of yelling into the void about this for a long time, so it's no surprises for anyone who's been around for a while here. As one professor explained to the New York Times, it's a departure from how CRISPR typically does gene replacement. Instead of altering genes based on discoveries in nature, the startup instead uses novel methods surfaced by its AI. They have, quote, "They have never existed on Earth," University of California, San Francisco professor James Frazier said. Quote, "The system has learned from nature to create them, but they are new." End quote. There's nothing new under the sun, folks. So this is not new. This is just, the scientists figuring out how to do things with AI and with CRISPR, gene editing, and thinking, breakthroughs, when really they are literally cutting the ribbon of the days of Noah. Think of it that way. With every CRISPR gene edit, it's synonymous with just cutting the big red ribbon of the big store of the days of Noah, which is unfolding right before our eyes here. And then it talks about Profluent, the company. They talk about how there's some ethical concerns with it. And then Profluent also chose to open source one of its gene editors, Open CRISPR-1, though the underlying AI will stay under wraps, the company said. So it's like, great. The method, Open CRISPR-1, is open source, but the AI that builds it is still not open source. So what good is having part of the software, you know, if the underlying AI that it uses is closed off or siloed? This is going to become a bigger issue with the network states that are forming and everything. The way it's open source versus closed source. It's been an ongoing debate in society for a long time. As far as computing has been a thing, it's been a debate. Like, hey, do we want all the software open source so everyone knows what's going on, everyone can use it, or do we want software that's closed source so that, you know, we can control who uses it, you know, who gets to tamper with the back end, all that stuff. And there's good and bad arguments for both. But this will become a political issue, I think, as we go forward, as it was in the 90s about, you know, is code speech, and as we have now from the establishment of certain rights in the 1990s with the internet, code is considered speech. And so, you know, we've had people get arrested for writing code, creating exchanges and things of that nature. And that's, when they do it open source, they can go to jail. So it's kind of like, all right, is it really worth it at some point if the centralized authorities always want to have some level of control over the software? But yeah, the society at large, as they become more educated on what's happening here, the masses that are for freedom of speech and, you know, get basic human rights and all these things, they will move towards open source software to create their sort of technium, and then, you know, other people will just continue to sink into the centralized sort of beast system and exploit their ability to centralize to move forward. So this is more important of a conversation when it comes to CRISPR, because we're talking about gene editing here. We're not talking about, you know, just some political lines or some, you know, how money gets distributed for some kind of project out there. This is editing your genetics. So, you know, again, this will become a political issue that it's going to get messy, because it is going to help some people, you know, cure diseases. We're going to hear more about curing diseases and probably curing cancer at this point, the way things are being set up. So moving forward here, this is coming from TechCrunch, a little bit more of a mainstream outlet here. And the headline here is Mammoth Biosciences lands exclusive license to new CRISPR proteins that could boost gene editing precision. Yes, because we need to be more precise. And, oh, interesting. You know, something slipped my mind. I usually check the date on these, and I did not check the date on this, and this is labeled August 12th, 2020. How did I find an article from 2020 today? Because this, you know, this has been happening more recently in my keyword stuff, because I will get an article based on a keyword, and I'll click on it because it's supposed to be in the feed, you know, just being published now. And for whatever reason, the article itself is from like 3 or 4 years ago. This probably has something to do with the algos. But anyway, okay, well, let's just talk about it, because I did kind of remember this. It did ring a bell a little bit, but maybe it's just good review, and maybe I'll do a quick research thing on where Mammoth Biosciences is now with it. But basically, it says here, CRISPR pioneer Mammoth Biosciences has secured an exclusive license to a new family of CRISPR proteins obtained from UC Berkeley. The license covers R&D and commercialization across all potential fields. This is a significant addition to Mammoth's intellectual property holdings, as this new family of CRISPR proteins, known as the Casφ family, is roughly half the size of Cas9, the protein that effectively launched CRISPR to begin with. Casφ it's written with the Greek. Is that Greek? I think it's Greek lettering there. Cas, instead of the number 9, it's the Greek phi. Like if you're doing, I don't know, fraternity or sorority stuff, it's the same thing. Phi, Casφ. And let's actually, now that I know that this is like an old article and I didn't catch it, I'm kind of shooting myself for that. Very upset that I didn't catch that earlier. But let's see if there are, what's the latest on Mammoth Biosciences, if there's any news of recent. Because we do need to keep up on this. Yeah, the problem with a lot of these types of stories is that it's all economic based. It's like stock based a lot of the time. You know, most of the time it's not about the technology that they're building or whatever it might be. It's more like, hey, look at the stock of Mammoth Biosciences. A good buy right now because, you know, gene editing is going to explode in 10 years or something like that. Yeah, okay. Let's see. Let me let me prove my point. I have this here. This was published on Yahoo. Okay, this is weird. All right, this was published on Yahoo Movies UK, and it's mirroring the TechCrunch article I just had from August 2020. So I'm just proving my point that it's in the feed right now, like being presented as if like, hey, this is just being published, but was not. It published 4 years ago. That itself is an interesting tactic. We know they recycle news. We've noticed that. We've been doing this long enough to know that they do that. But I wonder if there is some kind of stock thing here, because sometimes, you know, a lot of this has to do with, if it does have to do with some kind of Mammoth Biosciences stock price thing, then they'll push out an old story that'll get people pumped about it. Like, oh, look at this new thing or whatever, Casφ, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll buy up the stock thinking like, you know, they're buying the news basically, which you're supposed to sell the news. But yeah, it could be one of those things where just get it back in front of people because it excites whoever is a potential big buyer of the stock. And there you go. You get some, you know, you get some more financial play. Let's see. This one that I found is more recent, but again, it's from Market Watch, so it's probably going to have to do with the stock price here. But it says Regeneron sets CRISPR-based collaboration with Mammoth Biosciences. Oh, Regeneron! Yeah, those guys. Let's see. Regeneron on Thursday said it would make a $100 million upfront payment to Mammoth, including a $95 million equity investment in the biotechnology company. Wow, Regeneron is putting $95 million of an equity investment. Wow, okay. Regeneron said it would pair its delivery technologies with Mammoth's proprietary CRISPR-based gene editing platform to advance in vivo programs in multiple tissue and cell types. Regeneron said Mammoth will be eligible to receive up to $370 million per target in development. Oh, see, okay, yeah, there you go. Maybe that's what this was. There's a Regeneron makes a deal with Mammoth. They give him $95 million up front, and then they're eligible for another $200 million, almost $300 million. And so, hey, let's dust off the old, Casφ article. Get the Regeneron stockholders pumped to start pouring some cash into Mammoth Biosciences so we can pump that stock. I think that's what's going on, because it's an economic play through and through. And, there's two sides to it. There's the actual technology that will become commercialized and implemented and, perhaps help people with sickle cell or whatever disease and whatnot. But also it's editing your genes. And then there's the, just shameless make money side of it with the stock market and everything else, which is, it's a manipulated game of insiders at this point. Everybody can see the Ponzi scheme that is, the traditional financial system. And it just seems like more and more people are realizing it. More and more people are starting to exit the old system the best way they can in whatever thesis they provide, whether it's crypto, whether it's hard metal, or it's bullets or cigarettes or whatever it might be. People are preparing. People are preparing for an exodus. So that much could be said, and it makes sense. If we're going to live in a society where certain people through government programs are getting CRISPR-based injections, to fight disease, guys, come on, it's the same thing as the whole C-19 fiasco and the lockdowns and everything. And given the fact that one of the biggest threats, according to the Office of National Defense Intelligence, is bioweapons. I think there were even some stories, we're not going to cover it today, but how China is, getting ready with their bioweapons, and we got to watch out because their military is using marine toxins, basically, raising fears over biological warfare weapons. So that's all coming, and to combat that at the societal level, it's going to have to be these gene editing companies providing products and services, mainly products, to protect your genes. If China's going to invade us with gene-edited bioweapons, then we must gene-protect ourselves with our bio-shields, provided by Regeneron and Mammoth Biosciences. What could go wrong, folks? What could go wrong? All right, well, let's keep moving on this Wednesday.
It is Wednesday, my dudes. Wednesday.
Hey guys, know what day it is? It's Wednesday. It's time for Canary Cry News Talk. Yeehaw!
Wednesday, my dudes. It is Wednesday, my dudes.
It is Wednesday, my dude.
Really? Oh, yeah. It is Wednesday. It's May Day. It's Razzle Dazzle Basil Day, and there's no Basil. It's kind of sad, actually, but we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it. I just wanted to take this time and thank our producers of Treasure. I am not gonna do specific names or a list. However, I do want to list all of our producers that in groups, in sort of general groups, and that includes the Patreon supporters. Thank you. There's Patreon people that have been with us for years on either the Canary Cry Radio Patreon or the Canary Cry News Talk Patreon, and we truly appreciate you guys. You guys have been very dedicated to keeping this thing going, so thank you. Supply droppers, obviously, thank you so much. You guys are really such a major part of keeping this thing going. So we appreciate all the supply droppers. T-shirt council, salute all of you. As Basil calls you guys the most important people in the universe. The T-shirt council, making things happen as well. Monthly, appreciate it. The Babysitters Club, it's been really nice to have a babysitter, or basically a nanny, who's teaching, who's cooking, doing all the things, while I sit here and bring you guys the news with Basil and try to break it down the best we can and make sure we're grounding it in the scripture and the word and the truth. And so we appreciate all the folks who have jumped in over the last few months in the Babysitters Club. And of course, the Age of Deceit 4 focus group. It's coming. I know it's coming. I know there's so many obstacles, and the way this thing has been built, Basil has his hand on the steering wheel, which, he's exited the vehicle a couple times for emergency purposes. So, we don't have the full FSB yet, or what is it? FSD? No, FSV. What is it? Fully self-driving. FSD. I'm still trying to familiarize myself with some of the Tesla vehicle language. But yeah, there's no auto steer on our vehicle here. So we'll have to wait till Basil gets back to get that going. But the film is pretty much done as far as, the parts edited. I think, there's things I can tinker with, but it's pretty much ready to be shared, especially with the focus group. So I'm itching to make that happen. So I know that is on high on the priority list for Basil as he gets time and, he comes back and is fully back on the saddle. And then executive producers, thank you so much. You guys are amazing, especially the long streaking executive producers. You know who you are. Regular producers and streakers, thank you for being so loyal to the cause here. And a shout out to all the people on the Canary Cry Round Table, memorialized for, the purposes of producing this show at a level that is beyond what is expected of anybody. $1,000 or more when you become a knight or a dame at the Canary Cry Roundtable. We do have a couple of, let's see, barons and baronesses. Actually, we have a pair. We have Guy and Debbie, barons of the apocalyptic pastorland. But everybody else that's on the list here, they are knights or dames. And, you know, it's an important list because it does memorialize the long-standing support of the show at a level that I don't think people, other shows have, or you know, maybe, you know, memorialize in the way we have. Going all the way back to Dame Island Girl Lynn, our first dame, our first person at the round table, episode 209. So we're on episode 737. So just think about all those episodes and really many years of support. It's really cool. So it just warms my heart to see some of that. So thank you for all those who have been involved with that. And if you're close, you know, if you've been supporting monthly, or if you're in one of the groups in the supply drop or something like that, do some accounting and see where you're at, because you might be close to knighthood, and we'd love to put you on the list for the Canary Cry Roundtable. So there you go. You can do all that at canarycry.support. Canarycry.support. And of course, all of this is value for value.
Value for value. We take no money from corporations, commies, or cartels.
And value for value, again, it's not the most popular economic model. I'm actually, the other thing I wanted to mention is I'm very close to publishing my little Twitter X article about alt media and the different types of operations that may be going on now, where, you know, the common citizen and the super loyal intelligence operative were all sort of unleashed into the wild west of the digital network states forming, and how we should navigate through this time. And I talk about it. I'm not going to get into it here because it would put me on a rant that, you know, takes us in a whole different direction. But one of the things I mentioned in the article, and I've mentioned before, is analyzing the economic model of a content creator that you support, either, you know, with money or just support and listen to and get your news from, or whoever it might be. Because in this landscape where we don't know if a certain influencer or, you know, talking head or whatever is a natural situation, not natural, maybe organic or just sort of an independent type of scenario, or if it's, now that we have this big alt media thing going on, if they're part of this either new systematic thing, openly or covertly, it's confusing. So if you can analyze their ideology, what is the main message? The main message here is Jesus Christ is Lord, and, you know, we believe the Bible is true, and, you know, some basic points that we ground ourselves with here. That's the main message. And then what's the economic model? We do value for value because it just further aligns with that whole, I don't know, presupposition or thesis about, you know, what we represent here. And so, but value for value, you know, the economic model is one thing, but it goes beyond just the economics. It goes into, literally, we call them producers because they help us produce the show. And that means recognizing producers of their talent as well. So if you get value out of this show, you can put value back in by becoming a producer and, you know, give us however much value you think we deserve, whether it's $5 or $10 or $500. You know, it's whatever you feel like we deserve and whatever value you received, if you want to put back in that way. But also, it doesn't have to be money. It can be your talent. And that's a very important thing, because the culture is just as important as the finances when it comes to the ideologies or the you know, the main message. And you can't communicate a message nowadays, especially on the internet, unless you have visuals and video and audio and, you know, all kinds of media to deliver that message. And so basically creating memes or artwork that reflect our ideologies and our message here, that's really welcome here. And we call you producers because we find that extremely important. And so I wanted to real quickly thank and share some of the artwork coming in from our art producers. It'll be brief. It's only a couple pieces here, but we'll do it at the top of the show, or the first break here.
Audio production.
One art, please.
Yeah. Yep. The first thing we have is some audio from Jonathan F.
Jonathan F.
And Jonathan F. left a note to go along with this piece here, and he said, "Hello, thought it would be funny to memorialize this entitled response from the recent university pro-Palestine protest. This happens to be from the incident happening in Columbia University." So we will talk about some of this stuff, but one reason why I wanted to do this here now is because of this jingle.
Why should the university be obligated to provide food to people who have taken over a building?
Well, first of all, we're saying that they're obligated to provide food to students who pay for a meal plan here.
But you mentioned that there was a request that food and water be brought in, unless I misunderstood.
To allow it to be brought in. I mean, well, I guess it's ultimately a question of what kind of community and obligation Columbia feels it has to its students. Do you want students to die of dehydration and starvation or get severely ill, even if they disagree with you? If the answer is no, then you should allow basic, I mean, it's crazy to say because we're on an Ivy League campus, but this is like basic humanitarian aid we're asking for. Like, could people please have a glass of water?
But they did put themselves in that very deliberately.
I don't know if it was hard to hear maybe out there, but yeah, that was the incident at Columbia University. We'll talk about it in a moment here, but it was one of the, I guess it was a teacher or a lady that was speaking on a mic there, who said that basically, yeah, you got to get these protesters food and water, basic humanitarian support for these students who are protesting. And, one form of protest is going without food and, sort of fasting for the cause. So I don't know if she knows that or not. I don't know if that's the prerogative there. But I thought it was going to, Jonathan F., to be honest, I thought the clip was going to be, there was a young lady. I don't know if it was from the Columbia University one. I haven't been tracking all of the college chaos very closely over the last couple weeks. But there was one clip where they ask this girl why she's there. And she doesn't know. She doesn't know why she's there protesting. And she asks her friend, and her friend doesn't know either. It was like, what are you guys doing? Ah, man, the Psyop is strong. Anyway, thank you very much, Jonathan F. Appreciate that. We have also a piece of art to share with you from Sir Dove.
One art piece from Dove.
Sir Dove, Knight of Rusbeltia, has a note here. Peace and happy May Day, comrades. For today's artwork, I did another thumbnail duo illustration after you guys talked a few weeks back about going into the drug business and starting a coffee cartel if the V4V falls off. Yes, we discussed the possibility of going full board coffee brand to keep the train rolling. We'll abandon this value for value. We'll do a value for caffeine. That'll be our new model. Also, this episode marks 400 in a row I've produced art for. Whoa, Sir Dove. Knight of Rusbeltia. 400 episodes of producing art in a row. That is monumental. Congratulations. That is incredible. Wow. I don't even know what to say about that. That's a huge blessing. Back to the note here. Been a wild ride the last few years, but I'm going to have to take a short break from sending stuff in. No! I have a box of physical artwork I made for you guys that I'll try to send to your P.O. box next week. And soon I'll send art in for the show again. Just maybe not 400 in a row. Well, Sir Dove, you certainly deserve a break after 400 in a row. And we welcome anything that you can do. If it's once a week or once a month, we'll appreciate any type of art. Sir Dove has been probably he has been one of the most consistent people when it comes to producing, certainly when it comes to producing art. So we definitely appreciate you, Sir Dove. Also, if you guys could please assemble the producers for me, of course.
Producers, assemble!
All you producers out there, the Dove family could use some prayer right now, as we seem to be in one of those trying seasons where God is refining us. Yep. So, producers, we'll be there. We will be there for you, Dove, the Dove family. And yeah, trying time. A lot of trying times over the last couple years. It seems like it's just life. It is just life. But it comes in waves. It seems like, and certainly this last few weeks, especially, has been particularly rough on many of us here. So, yeah, we'll be praying for you, Sir Dove, and you are definitely not alone in this battle. So, thank you. Oh, and keep doing what you do, and I'll keep praying for you. Thank you very much, Sir Dove. And yes, we have this great piece of art. You saw the duo on the episode art today, but it's it's a picture in the background of an aisle. It looks like, what is that, coffee? Is that coffee? I don't know what that is. It just looks like plants to me. I don't know anything about coffee. And then there's a derpy bird Basil on the left holding, I don't know guns names either. Is that a machine gun? An Uzi? What is that? Oh, it's a coyote hole puncher. I zoomed in. It's a coyote hole puncher. That's right. And then, and he's got a straw hat on, looking derpy, looking ready to go. On the right is me wearing a straw hat with the little prayer hands. And I'm sniffing on some coffee beans. I'm holding a big old bag of coffee beans, and if you can kind of peek there, you can see a little bit of the Canary Cry logo on the, what is that, a mesh bag or something? Perfect. That is exactly what I would be doing if I had to get into the coffee business. And as far as I understand, my family personally, I have a lot of mysteries. My parents didn't fill me in on everything going on pre them coming to America. I know very little about my grandparents and that side of the family, but I've been told that I have an uncle that lived in, I believe it was Brazil, that had a coffee business. There was some Shimura coffee shop down there or something, which I think I looked that up. There was a Shimura coffee shop somewhere down there that closed. It did not get very good reviews the last few years, and I think it closed down. I don't know if I have any relation to it whatsoever, but apparently that's a thing. So maybe it's in my blood. I don't know. We'll find out in the future, I guess. But there you go. Thank you very much, Sir Dove. Thank you to the artists. Apologies to the microfiction folk. It's just a huge stall with that. We'll get back on the train with that as soon as things fall back in order here. So stay tuned for that. If you would like to support us with your art, you can go to canarycry.art, and it's a whole submission page. You can check out some other people's art. There's a little thing written on it and a little button where you can upload your art, and we'll take a look at it. We'll share it with the Canarium if it is appropriate. And also, if you would like to submit an article for us to consider, you can go to canarycry.report and fill out the form there. You can give us a little note about why you're sending in this stuff, and it's been a great resource, and just some information on what people see out there, and letting us know, especially when it comes to stuff that we may not have covered in a while, and sometimes it's hard to fit some of it, and it might feel like I've sent stuff in and they never cover it. Yeah, sometimes that happens, but it's okay. It's part of the apparatus, and we will make sure that it, some of those stories, once, for example, if there's something you sent in and something comes up, we can reference back to that, and we'll have a database with all of it there. So it's just a way to keep us organized, or as much as we can, or as organized as we can be. So there you go. Thank you very much. And let's move on. What are we doing next? Is it a Flippy update? Tis a Flippy update. Where's my Flippy? Where's my Flippy? Here we go.
Flippy update.
Do you want fries with that?
Yes, the FLIPPY update. FLIPPY is the colloquial name for the disembodied robot arms that are taking our jobs and saving our children and flirting with our spouses. We use talking about FLIPPY as a way to explore the many ways robots are taking over the world and how there's nothing we can do about it. Today's FLIPPY update. Oh, hold on. Where's my FLIPPY update? Did I miss the FLIPPY update on the rundown? I think I did. Yeah. See, you know, there's certain things that just fall through the cracks sometimes on shows like today. But okay, here we go. This is coming from Hortidaily.com, like horticulture, Hortidaily.com. I have to do the text-only version to get the whole article here, but the article is titled, Six-Arm Robot Pollinates Greenhouses. Six-arm robot pollinates greenhouses. And it says this, to address the issue of endangered pollinators, particularly bees and certain types of moths, butterflies, and flies, researchers from West Virginia University developed a precision pollination robot named Stickbug. According to the study, Stickbug is a six-armed multi-agent precision pollination robot that combines the accuracy of single-agent systems with swarm parallelization in greenhouses. Ugh, big words. Each of the bots' arms functions independently to reduce the complexities in planning and increase the effectiveness of the tasks at hand. Bugs has been specially designed for greenhouse environments. Its ambition is to navigate narrow rows easily by employing a compact holonomic Kiwi drive. Okay. It is also equipped with a detection model and classifier that identifies targeted flowers for contact-based pollination using a felt-tipped end effector. Wow. Okay. So it's got like, I mean, it's pretty much like a real bug. It's got little sensors on its hands. They're independent. They feel for things. They check it out, what kind of flower it is, and they're able to, wow, this is crazy. The robot's design proposes a promising solution to offset the effects of declining natural pollinators, potentially safeguarding food security worldwide. Wow. Okay, so we have these little robots called Stickbugs. Let me see if this interesting engineering article is more of the full thing. Stickbugs, a precision pollination robot going around. And here we go. Yeah, great. Meet Stickbug, the new six-arm pollinating bot living in greenhouses. I mean, there's a picture of it here. We can see it for anybody watching. It's a pretty big robot. It's not like a little tiny bug, as I thought it was. It's a huge bot with robot arms kind of walking through and touching the plants and everything. And, you know, the part that jumped out at me was when it said that the robot's design proposes a promising solution to offset effects of declining natural pollinators. Like, oh, yeah, the natural pollinators, they're going away, so gotta unleash the robots. Like, do we just skip the part where we try to, you know, not mess with the natural thing? Do we just have to go straight to robots every time? I mean, it's the double-edged sword, isn't it? It's kind of like, yeah, we can do it, so let's do it. Let's not try to restore balance with nature as the Rosicrucians wanted to do. Or maybe they did, and they just didn't have the robot parts to make it happen the way they wanted to back then when they put together the Georgia Guidestones there. But, yeah, you know, it's not just your job. It's not just humans. The robots are taking over everything. Pollinating greenhouses. This is like, and to protect your food. This is really where it gets into, what was that quote? Control food. I forget the quote now. Control food and control population. Something like that. There's a few quotes like that from the elite there. I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was the Rothschilds. I don't know. There's a few of them I'm pulling up here. I'm not finding the exact one. Maybe someone in the chat knows the exact quote I'm thinking about. But yeah, anyway, yeah, it's the whole thing where it's the idea being if you control the population's food supply, you can control, you know, kind of their behavior or their politics or whatever it might be. Same thing with money. If you control nation's money. I care not who makes its laws or whatever. That was the Rothschild quote. But yeah, it's another example of how robotics is completely taking over all kinds of things, not just human jobs, but insect jobs. Insect jobs are being taken over as well. And well, I'm curious to see what would happen if once the plants have robot arms, you know, like the robot arm plants, or the plants that had the bio arms that played instruments. Last couple episodes we covered it. Are they just gonna, I don't know, it would be a weird party there, you know, if the bionic arm of a plant comes in contact with a robot arm that pollinates plants. I don't know. It's just it's getting pretty chaotic. It's just robots all the way down, folks. Robots all the way down. All right, let's move on here. I got a really, really interesting story here.
PSYOPS.
And this is also 5th generation warfare.
5th gen warfare.
They're targeting you. They're targeting you.
5th gen warfare.
And I also think it helps us contextualize the whole idea of World War III.
And you shall hear wars and rumors of wars.
World War III. We can fight the Third World War down there.
It's an article coming from The Atlantic, and the headline here is "The Sci-Fi Writer Who Invented Conspiracy Theories." It all goes back to one man in the 1950s, a military intelligence expert in psychological warfare. It's, man, it's crazy because it's another one of those topics that used to just be for fringy weirdo folks. And now The Atlantic, the mainstream, is carrying it. But they are presenting it, the way they do it is very fascinating because they are, in some ways, exposing their own infrastructure, their own pillars. The Atlantic stands on their propaganda pillars. They're exposing it, but they're doing it in a very interesting way. I'm going to read it from the text-only version just because it's helpful for me. The main version has that big old thing on the bottom, and I don't know, it's kind of hard to get through it sometimes. So here's what the article says. In 1950, a U.S. Army PSYOPS officer named Paul Linebarger used a pseudonym to publish a science fiction story titled "Scanners Live in Vain" in a pulp magazine. Now, first of all, for the Atlantic to just be like, yeah, the U.S. in the 50s, the U.S. Army, he was a PSYOP officer. Oh, okay. I thought the whole idea of a PSYOP was just, you know, crazy conspiracy theory, but yeah, hey, you know, I mean, yeah, I guess they're caught up to history that we had some PSYOP officers. Huh. It was about a man named Martel who works for the quote-unquote deep state in the far future as a mysterious quote-unquote scanner or starship pilot, and whose mind is manipulated by evil bureaucrats. After a new technology called a quote cranching wire restores his true senses, he recognizes that his bosses within the government order that his bosses within the government order a hit on anyone who challenges their control of space travel and the economy. Martel ultimately joins an insurrectionary movement. Insurrectionary movement aimed at overthrowing the regime. So right away, we have a PSYOP officer, a real U.S. Army PSYOP officer who wrote a fiction in a pulp magazine about a guy in the future who wakes up from the Matrix and suddenly is part of an insurrection movement to overthrow the regime. Okay. All right. I see what they're doing. If this narrative sounds like a QAnon conspiracy theory, there's a good reason for that. Today's dystopian political rhetoric has its roots in mid-century sci-fi. Does it? Does it really? One could argue it's rooted in like late 1800s Trump books, time travel books, or, like all ancient mythology, or like the Bible. But yeah, okay, yeah, just give it all to this intelligence officer who wrote some science fiction. Today's dystopian political rhetoric has its roots in mid-century sci-fi. Martel's struggle against secretive, malevolent authorities echoes in the Pizzagate shooters' fantasy about a cabal of politically powerful pedophiles. We can also see its inspiration in Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's anti-Semitic Facebook rant about space lasers beamed at the Earth, and the Donald Trump advisor Roger Stone's intimation that Bill Gates, quote, played some role in the creation, end quote, of COVID-19. So already they are using the framework of, this Psyop guy who wrote a science fiction, wrote about this whole insurrectionary attitude of awakening against the evil, corrupt cabal, and then just tying it to everything Republican, conservative, right-wing, Trump, all that stuff. Very traditionally, QAnon, all of it. Very traditional for them to do that. So they're not really breaking the mold too much, but they are sort of, I don't know, showing, they're lifting the skirt just a little bit, so to speak. Linebarger, who's the author of this, who died of a heart attack in 1966 at age 53, could not have predicted the tropes from his sci-fi stories about mind control and techno-authoritarianism which shape 21st century American political rhetoric. But the persistence of his ideas is far from accidental, because Linebarger wasn't just a writer and soldier. He was an anti-communist intelligence operative who helped define U.S. psychological operations, or PSYOPS, during World War II and the Cold War. His essential insight was that the most effective psychological warfare is storytelling. Hey, welcome to the Fifth Gen War.
Fifth generation warfare, the battle for the minds of the population, a war of narratives.
A war of narratives. Storytelling. So, this is the Atlantic covering fifth generation warfare. But it's the Atlantic covering fifth generation warfare, which means this piece itself is a product or a weapon in the fifth generation war. I hope everybody understood that logic. That they are covering, I don't think they mentioned fifth generation warfare by that term in this article, but that's what they're talking about. Warfare, psychological warfare with narratives. That's the whole concept of fifth generation war. And they're talking about it, giving an origin and then giving an explanation for why the conservatives and the fringy and people are all crazy and they're all science fiction intelligence operatives, basically. But the Atlantic are doing the very same thing. They are creating a narrative here. And it's a narrative that needs to be done in this way because so many people are aware of all the shenanigans at this point. The baseline knowledge of this stuff is at a much higher place than it was 10 years ago. Most people are aware of the corruption and the Ponzi scheme of the economics, and fake news was like, oh, fake news. But then now everyone's like, nobody trusts media, especially after the whole Trump era and then the COVID situation. And so all-time low trust with institutions, governments, all this stuff. Of course, narrative matters. Narrative is the only thing that matters. And in fact, if you look at alt media, that's all it is. It's a different narrative that was proposed to the masses against the mainstream narrative. And people are choosing the alt narrative because it seems like it's more true, but it may not end up being more true. It may end up being more true in some ways. But ultimately, I don't know that it's leading to a better end, per se. It's just whether you're ending up on the right hand or the left hand of the duality that is presented before us. Linebarger saw PSYOPs as an emotionally intense, persuasive form of fiction And to him, no genre engaged people's imaginations better than science fiction. I pored over Linebarger's personal papers at the Hoover Institution propaganda collection while researching my forthcoming book, Stories Are Weapons, Psychological Warfare and the American Mind. Yeah, very, very cool Atlantic author. He's edgy stories are weapons. Boxes of his studies on the politics of China and Southeast Asia are filed alongside his fiction manuscripts and unpublished musings on psychology. Here, I realized, was an origin story for modern conspiracy politics, which blur the line between sci-fi plots and American patriotism. Yeah, the blurring of the line of the sci-fi plot is because the technology, of what the technology is doing. It's the technium putting pressures on politics in that way. They came from a Psy-war operative. Psy-war operative. Put another way, an agent of what some would now call, quote-unquote, the deep state, had devised the far-out stories that politicians like Green use to condemn it. Perhaps if she and others knew this, they might not be so eager to place blame space lasers and vaccine microchips or what ails our nation, or for what ails our nation. So, interesting take here. So now they're saying that in the same way that science fiction is used as a tool almost to convince these low-thinking, not very smart politicians, to bite the bait and to, start condemning Jewish space lasers and, having all kinds of stuff that you're buying into. You are taking the bait of the Psy-war. They want you to believe this science fiction nonsense, right? It's an interesting play. Under the pen name Cordwainer Smith. Yeah, that sounds like a definite pen name. Cordwainer Smith. Linebarger wrote many stories about the instrumentality, a totalitarian intergalactic empire that is toppled by rebels like Martel. Linebarger's fiction won a cult following and was nominated for a Nebula and a Hugo, two of the most prestigious awards for science fiction writing. And then down here, still, Linebarger's most significant book was undoubtedly a classified U.S. Army guide titled simply Psychological Warfare, and published under his real name. To undertake a successful influence campaign, he advised, imagine you're inventing a character for the person you're targeting with propaganda. Envision this subject, whom he named Propaganda Man. Then, quote, make up the pre-war life for him, including his likes, prejudices, and favorite kind of gossip. Once this propaganda man felt three-dimensional, as though drawn from a good story, the goal was to design a psychological operation designed to engage propaganda man and transmit that message that, quote, he is your friend, you are his friend, and, quote, the only enemy is the enemy leader or generals or emperor or capitalists or they, end quote. Okay, so part of this, I do want to say that if you've been in advertising or marketing, this is why we don't do value for value. If you've ever had a meeting with like a marketing guy, or if you read up on marketing, especially in the last 10 years with the solopreneurs and the entrepreneurs and all this kind of stuff, one of the things you hear is you gotta form your avatar. What is your avatar? It's your ideal customer. Create the whole, it's basically the propaganda man. They tell you to, what is your ideal customer? What kind of books do they read? What kind of TV shows do they watch? You create this profile of this imaginary individual who is your perfect customer. And then you start to create a campaign around making that person buy your product. That's marketing. That's propaganda. Marketing, in sort of a very clear bridge with propaganda. You can see how they are the same thing. That's what this is. He's describing the propaganda man is the avatar in the entrepreneur talk of today. So there you go. Interesting. And, for political reasons, it's the same thing. You create the perfect individual. What kind of person would vote, would click for, Trump, for example, on the ballot box? Well, they maybe are, in their 40s or 50s. They're Christian. They, whatever the thing is, whatever the profiling is. Previous approaches to this branch of warfare, he wrote, had relied merely on censoring the news and distributing stodgy propaganda full of, quote, strong-faced men building dams and teaching better chicken raising, end quote. It would be better, Linebarger suggested, if American propaganda was as entertaining as a Laurel and Hardy movie, giving audience members a good time while teaching them that America was their ally. Wow, sounds like the calling cry or basic principles for Hollywood in the last 50 years. The character of Martel clearly resembles a propaganda man. A cranching wire might be the antenna on his radio, tuning in the agitprop vehicles like Voice of America that inspire him to resist his despotic overlords. Linebarger's military guide was foundational for the United States' unique approach to propaganda, which has long borrowed techniques from pop culture to promote the nation's interests. One of the early 20th century masterminds of U.S. propaganda was a public relations pioneer named Edward Bernays, whom we've talked about. If you've ever studied propaganda and advertising, Edward Bernays is a major player who began his career marketing cigarettes in the 1920s and ended it helping the CIA spread misinformation about the leftist Guatemalan government in the 1950s. His idea, which shaped Linebarger's own thinking, was that propaganda was like advertising in a popular magazine. It should push one simple message in a persuasive and seductive style. What did I say, folks, about the whole thing? I gotta release that Twitter X article. I said that you gotta analyze the message. You gotta take away all the messaging and just focus on the message. What is the message that any given content creator or advertisement or anything, any piece of media, what are they trying to deliver? What is that message that they're trying to deliver? And that's not easy to do all the time because videos, music, it appeals to our emotions. And so we get emotionally wrapped into some piece of content and we miss the underlying messages consciously. But that's the whole idea, is you get wrapped in the emotions and then the messages come in like a Trojan horse and then you're activated in a certain way. So, okay, it should push one simple message in a persuasive and seductive style. This makes an instructive contrast with what the Rand Corporation has called Russia's Soviet-derived, quote, fire hose of falsehood strategy, whereby operatives inundate the media with lies and chaotic contradictory stories to undermine the public's faith in all information sources. I think that's going on too. Not necessarily that it's Russia doing it, but the Russian style, the Soviet style fire hose of falsehood method, where you just, spray blast false information, which lowers the general sentiment of trust for all news sources or all news agencies or even, content creators. That's definitely been part of the agenda. They've been doing that for a while too. If Russia's motto is in effect, quote, believe nothing, America's has been believe us. At the height of the Cold War, Linebarger was inventing a way to make people believe in America using techniques borrowed from fantastical storytelling. Interesting. So what they're trying to say here, they're explaining the whole propaganda apparatus. They're getting into Bernays. They're doing all that. But they're still trying to say, this whole thing that Linebarger was trying to do is sort of making American people believe. See, he's the grandfather of PSYOPs, you see? And so if you are in that camp and you're like, hey, pro-America, and you're leaning on that Trump side, you're Republican, you're MAGA, you're conservative, whatever you are, then just understand that you're just playing a part in this PSYOP that has been presented before you, as if this article itself is not part of the PSYOP. Linebarger's father was a diplomat, of course he was, who worked closely with the Chinese nationalist leader Sun Yat-sen, who became the younger Linebarger's godfather. Okay, so we got some CCP connection there. Paul Linebarger himself spent a great deal of his childhood traveling in China, learning Mandarin and studying Sun's political vision. As an adult, Linebarger made it his mission to topple the communist regime and restore the republic that Sun had built. Although he did not accomplish this, in fact, he could, as Cordwainer Smith, depict such a struggle in fiction. The instrumentality can be read as a surreal version of China's government under Mao Zedong. One way to understand Linebarger's fiction is as PSYOPs aimed partly at a Chinese propaganda man who might be induced to rise up against his communist overlords. Okay. It's always about the anti-communist stuff. It's very interesting because I believe that whole thing, the anti-communism thing itself, was also part of this, the grander PSYOP, but it's under these conditions of communism as a threat where this sort of Western-style propaganda really got birthed. And it's interesting to see that a man that the Atlantic is touting as the guy who invented modern conspiracy theories altogether is not only was he an intelligence officer, but he has ties to the Chinese Communist Party in a way, or at least the anti-communist party there in China, the Chinese Nationalist Party, which it very much aligns with, I wonder if there's any connection with the Epoch Times and all that stuff, because that Epoch Times, they're sort of leading the conservative charge as well, and they are part of the I guess it's like it's been described as like an end times cult, but I forget the exact name here. I do reference it in Age of Deceit 4 there at one of the intro things. But yeah, Falun Gong. That's right. Falun Gong, who are anti-communists. They're trying to they think there's going to be an apocalypse or an Armageddon type situation. Very interesting. So it's very fascinating here. all the different ties they have to stuff going on now. Literary critics have pointed out references in Linebarger's stories to Chinese classics such as Journey to the West and Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which makes sense in light of Linebarger's instruction that propaganda should imitate pop culture. He wanted his stories to be engaging for people who grew up with the adventures of Sun Wukong, also known as Monkey King, the hero of Journey to the West, as well as for those who grew up with Superman. Using the power of myth, he insinuated that liberation could come from the Christian West. In the story, The Dead Lady of Clowntown, for example, cyborg insurrectionists use legends about the Catholic martyr Joan of Arc to persuade human-animal hybrid underpeople to join their fight against the rulers of instrumentality. See, this is where I think the Atlantic, by bringing this up, are doing the pivot to keep up with this idea that we are going into the days of Noah.
But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be.
Because again, the only written documents in history that are acknowledged in academia and all this stuff that even comes close to referencing, other than the modern times of science fiction, where the sort of conceptual ideas about human-animal hybrids or cyborgs or all this type of stuff, it all came as a result of the Industrial Revolution and computing and advancements in mathematics and science and physics and all this stuff, all this increase in knowledge. The only time in written history that we can relate to any of that is ancient times, ancient mythology, extra-biblical text, and even the biblical text itself. So for the Atlantic to be like, hey, see, it's science fiction, the fifth generation warfare narrative that they are using as a weapon is that it's all nonsense. It's all a psyop. Anytime you hear about cyborgs or, real life type of stuff with human-animal hybrids, genetic editing, all that stuff, that's all sci-fi, psyop nonsense. Very interesting. Modern conspiracy influencers. have taken up Linebarger's mantle. I like that. Conspiracy influencers. We certainly don't consider ourselves conspiracy influencers around here, but what do they do? Do they post like, I guess they post on, you know, what's funny? Now that X, you know, Elon took over X, if you go there, you will see who the conspiracy influencers, because they'll post, you know, stuff that's like really kind of old, or I don't know, whatever. It's things that have been known in the circles of people that roam in the conspiracy land for a long time, you know, and they'll post something about it and they'll say breaking news, you know, and some old article about a UFO that hovered over a building or something. And then they get like hundreds of thousands of views and tens of thousands of thumbs ups and comments and reshares and all this stuff. And it's like, oh man, okay. And here we are, we try to create, you know, provide deep analysis with our content, and, you know, the algos are like, yeah, Psalm 40, Matt Wallace. There you go. So true. Matt, for anybody who doesn't know Matt Wallace, let me just go to his Twitter page. I think I even muted him. I couldn't handle his posts anymore. But okay, here we go. A great example. Great example. Oh, and this is news, and we get the Matt Wallace breakdown. Matt Wallace tweets out, "Just in, cameras capture the terrifying moment Sophia the robot decided it was time to take over humanity." And it's Sophia the robot, and she does fall off the stage there. She's sort of talking, or not, I guess, I don't know what she's doing. She's addressing something, and she starts rolling forward, and then she just falls off. I think she's on like a mini stage. And yeah, Sophia took a tumble there. Yeah, okay. So there you go. That's how Matt Wallace puts it. Just in, cameras captured terrifying moment Sophia the robot decided it was time to take over humanity. Or it was the moment Sophia the robot was shown to be not a great robot. Can't tell where to stand. All right, Matt Wallace. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, here's another one. Keep looking at this LaMelo Ball tattoo until you see it. Okay, there's some UFO stuff in there. Twitter pedophiles, and okay, let's get to Matt Wallace. That's enough Matt Wallace. All right, this guy is really, yeah, he is a conspiracy influencer. Perfect example. Thank you for that, Psalm 40. Okay, back to the Atlantic article here. Modern conspiracy influencers have taken up Linebarger's mantle, as the NBC reporter Ben Collins told the WNYC show On the Media in 2020. The far right, in particular, is, quote, very good at storytelling. It's world building. That's what it really is, end quote. World building is a term that speculative fiction authors commonly use to describe the project of creating a fantasy realm so fully realized and all-enveloping that audiences willingly suspend their disbelief. I'm sure if you go back into the transcripts of early Canary Cried Radio, Face Like the Sun content, that idea of suspending disbelief was mentioned often, because that's kind of what the technology and science progress has done. It has suspended disbelief, but it's also what we do as believers. We suspend disbelief to have faith in Christ. But I would argue that it is a very informed suspension of disbelief. And I would only say disbelief in the manner of everyday sort of physics, or, you know, just sort of the material world, so to speak. You know, because I think if you're in the realm of understanding the unseen realm and the supernatural realm, and you've been a Christian for a long time, you sort of understand that, like, okay, there's this physical realm, we're in it, we see it, we feel things, we do things, we're in it. There's things we can't change in this world. Like, you get hit by a bus, you get hit by a bus. You know, there's not much you can do. But there's this other realm that's unseen, that we don't understand, that we don't fully integrate with at this point. And there are intelligent minds there. There's a God that's above all that created everything, and so on. So suspending disbelief is something that all people do. It's just what disbelief you are suspending, basically. And it might be, for some people, it might be like, hey, the disbelief is that people come back from the dead. People usually don't come back from the dead, for the most part, right, throughout history. But the claim of Jesus is that he, in fact, rose from the dead. He appeared in front of hundreds of people as a resurrected Jesus. These are things that you can take into account as historical and inform you of your faith. And so, but in this context, they're talking about politics where you suspend disbelief, which in their mind is sort of like they suspend reality, which is, ironically enough, this little bubble reality they've created themselves, this narrative bubble that they have worked so hard to create, this false universe of their whole world there, of the elite and all this stuff, whatever they think is going on. Suspend that disbelief to believe this other stuff going on, which is not exactly what's going on here. World building in speculative fiction and game design, quote, is political always, the author and critic Laurie Penny writes. Those who imaginatively inhabit fictional worlds become intensely invested in them, which helps explain how fan debates over video games morphed into the right-wing attack pylon known as Gamergate in 2014. But influencers on the left, too, have used fantasy fictions to advance their political causes. Oh, okay. So when the left does it, it's okay. It's cool. It's art. The creator of Wonder Woman, William Moulton Marston, famously described his strong heroine as, quote-unquote, propaganda for liberated women. In early issues of the comic, he even included historical sketches of real-life female scientists, explorers, and political leaders to drive home his message that women were equals of men. The more recent example of world building for an ideological purpose would be the Left Behind series by the Christian writer Jerry Jenkins and Tim LaHaye. This makes me think, the fact that The Atlantic even included this as an example makes me think the whole Left Behind series is part of the intelligence operation, because they're just telling you, oh yeah, the government uses mythology to create movements. Yeah, here you go. Okay, so Left Behind series by Christian writers Jerry Jenkins and Tim LaHaye, a minister who established the prominent right-wing think tank, the Council for National Policy. They found a winning formula in combining end times fantasy, the rapture, in evangelical teaching, with political conflicts drawn from recent history. Ah, yes, they found the perfect formula. Combine end times fantasy, the rapture, with political conflicts, and we have a perfect recipe for billions of dollars and also a Council for National Policy, a think tank. Their best-selling book, which have sold more than 65 million copies and spawned a film franchise, helped popularize a brand of apocalyptic millenarian belief found among some MAGA extremists. This undermines people like you and I, other Christians, other believers, who may have a certain eschatology that is not aligned with pre-trib rapture, type of scenario. The rapture is in the Bible, folks. You can deduce it from a certain word in the Greek that was translated to Latin, and that Latin word became an English word, rapture. So it's there. The timing of it is sort of how different eschatologies have developed. And certainly the pre-trib rapture became very popular with the Left Behind series. It's a cultural staple. And I would even say that there are people that, became followers of Face Like the Sun or Canary Cry Radio or News Talk who were part of that. They were part of that whole movement back then when, Bible prophecy became pretty much mainstream in a sense. But I find it interesting that because it got so popular, it was politicized to a point where they have a think tank and they somewhat control the politics of a certain sector of American society, religious politics, if you will. And that undermines all the nuance. You know, you just have to, because it's politicized, you can have like a very nuanced, different view to the whole Left Behind eschatology, and even point out some of the problems with the whole Left Behind eschatology and theology. But you're still sort of in the eyes of the world, so to speak. You're sort of just, yeah, but you're Christian and you believe Jesus is coming back. So you believe a end times fantasy, and therefore, you know, you're one of them. You're one of these crazy folk over here. Seems like a honeypot to, you know, get all believers to stick to this particular brand of Christianity, at least in the eyes of the public. When Linebarger died, he left a large corpus of unpublished monographs and intelligence reports written under his own name. Interesting stuff. Most of his books for the public were science fiction written as Cordwainer Smith. He also wrote literary fiction and thrillers under other pseudonyms. What united these disparate interests was the mind of a person who knew that the tools of fantastical storytelling could be very effective in persuading people to build a new reality. A new reality. In Psychological Warfare, Linebarger instructed intelligence officers to combat America's adversaries and woo new allies with propaganda that felt like science fiction. Quote, "It is the purpose that makes it propaganda," he wrote. Quote, "and not the truthfulness or untruthfulness of it," end quote. Listen to that. This is very esoteric. It's like the Aleister Crowleyan sort of occult law or esoteric law that, you know, you got to have intentional, purposeful energy, and that's more important than the vehicle that it's delivered in. It's the purpose that makes it propaganda, not the truthfulness or untruthfulness of it. Okay, of course, Linebarger was very clever about his purpose, to win people to the American way. But the world-building power of sci-fi storytelling that he championed can be adapted for very different purposes as a weapon of mass disinformation. And I would argue, yes, it can be used as a weapon of mass disinformation. And The Atlantic, you are participating in crafting your narrative here and being a spear in the pile of weapons of mass disinformation. Can't not mention that, okay? The Atlantic. Participating in the weaponization and mass disinformation, or weapon of mass disinformation. I spoke with one of Linebarger's intellectual heirs, a former PSYOPS instructor for the Army. Man, they're just coming out in droves. We got PSYOPS officers, PSYOPS instructors, who told me that he and his colleagues worry a lot about psychological warfare's, quote, second or third order effects, end quote, consequences that can be completely unintended. One such consequence is the ubiquity of conspiracy thinking, through which all of reality is converted into fiction rather than believe us. People will believe anything. Ah! Okay, so now they're kind of saying, yeah, so, you know, we get in a room, you know, we discuss how we can present this fake story narrative that appeals to science fiction and creates a new reality for people. Okay, but the problem is it can create second or third order effects, unintended consequences that we did not suspect, where they rise against the wrong person, or they rise for the wrong cause, or, you know, they don't quite get the message right or something. So, you know, now that you think we're reading this and kind of reflecting on the last few years, I am sure that so much of what we see and hear and read in the news stories and all of it, much of it has to do with the second or third order effects. And in fact, it might be the role of the mainstream to even use the second or third order effects as their bait to push back and say, oh, look at these crazy conspiracy theorists. Because, especially if they don't get the messaging right and they, rise against the thing that they weren't supposed to rise against or whatever it is, it's very helpful to be able to be like, yeah, look at them, point a finger at them and say, oh, see, they went the wrong way. They're not they're just peddling conspiracy theories and they're on the fringes and all this kind of stuff. They can be used as bait in the mainstream. Linebarger could hardly have envisioned the Twilight Zone-esque tales that the Trump attorneys Rudy Giuliani and Sidney Powell spun about election fraud in 2020, but even bad science fiction can make very fine propaganda. So there you go. They never left the left. They never evolved. The Atlantic, I'm talking about. The Atlantic didn't get off their high horse about how the Trump and the whole thing and all this, it's all science fiction. In fact, the whole election fraud narrative was just bad science fiction. It wasn't even real. And that is troubling. It's troubling. It's troubling in a way that because once you establish the baseline that anything that is reported from one side of the political aisle, especially if it is fantastic in nature, if it's almost like it's unbelievable, then it's just science fiction. I sense a lot of doublespeak coming from the Atlantic because they're going to champion certain brands or certain companies that have brain chips and metaverses and virtual this, and they're probably going to champion some of that. They'll pick and choose their brand that they're going to push or whatever. But that's coming, and a lot of that is the bedrock for the reenchantment of society, the Carl Teichrieb sacred secularity. I quote Carl's book, The Game of Gods, twice in Age of Deceit 4 because of the fact that he references this sacred secularity. And that comes about through what has been a cultural and spiritual evolution from the sciences and the Enlightenment and all this stuff, where you think it's just numbers and everything, but really it's a very spiritual thing. And it does impact minds, especially young people. And this is where the World War III aspect of this comes in. This is, it's still a psyop, but it's sort of the psyop in effect or in motion.
PSYOPS.
Now I want to start with AP here, Associated Press, a look at the protests of the war in Gaza that have emerged at U.S. colleges. And I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll just mention how the college campuses across the country are starting to get pretty violent on this issue, pro-Israel versus pro-Palestine. And this has always been a thing. I remember when I was in college in 2003, 2004, real heated debates about Israel-Palestine situations going on in the hall there. I walked in, I didn't know what was going on, and I at the time I had no clue what the conflict involved, but there were green screen falling. Ow, 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 oh no. Oh, that hurt bad. Oh my gosh. Oh, this metal pole just ow. I want to say words right now that I can't say. Ah. Oh, that got me right in the head. Oh. Okay. I'm okay. Hey, why does stuff always happen when Basil's not here? Oh my gosh. Ugh. Okay, get myself together here. Whew. That was painful. Painful. All right. I'm going to guess put myself, part of myself back on screen here. Yeah, that's a clip for the bloopers for sure. That'll go down in history. It's the cat jumping on Basil's head and then the cymbal stand that I used for a green screen that fell on my head. Oh, man. This is a heavy-duty piece. This is a cymbal stand made out of metal. Is not a light thing. This is a very heavy thing. Okay. All right. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah. College campuses, people, students protesting. So we have Columbia University. Hundreds of New York City police officers began entering the campus of Columbia University last Tuesday night as dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters demonstrating against Israel-Hamas war remained on campus. And there's lots of pictures and footage coming out of Columbia. California State Polytechnic University in Humboldt also had a week-long occupation. The California it ended around 3 a.m. on last Tuesday when dozens of police officers wearing helmets and wielding batons cleared protesters from campus. All right, good. We got the police state there to keep things under control. The university said 25 people were arrested and taken to jail. A group of demonstrators showed up at the jail later Tuesday, waving Palestinian flags as they rallied for their release. Okay, so there's another school there. And then there's Yale University. Oh, Yale, of course. Ground zero for the Skull and Bones. Of course they're going to be part of this, which is partly why, it's kind of easy to identify that this type of thing is probably instigated by, certain folks. Maybe part of an apparatus, behind the scenes and whatnot. Where's my Skull and Bones jingle? I need my Skull and Bones jingle board. Give it up. Come on. Where are you? There you are. Yeah. Skull and Bones at Yale University. Yale authorities cleared a protesters' encampment Tuesday morning after students heeded final warnings to leave. So, okay, a little bit of that. University of Connecticut police moved in on campus encampments. So it's interesting. There's this police state thing happening all across college campuses. Harvard University, Princeton University, Brown University, Northwestern University, University of Texas, Austin. I mean, these are just some. University of Southern California, UCLA, George Washington University, Virginia Tech, DePaul University, Case Western Reserve University. This is not one or two universities. This is a lot of places across the country all having this situation come to a head at the same time, to the point where AP is listing, what is this, 15 of them? 15 universities? University of Florida, University of Michigan, Virginia Commonwealth University, Portland State, Tulane University, University of Georgia, University of Utah, University of Minnesota, University of New Mexico. I think that's where they ended there. But yeah, that's a huge list of college campuses all at the same time getting violent, or at least, having the police move in. And what I find troubling, if we look at the history, the pattern of the last few years here, where we look at the whole woke thing, we look at the whole woke culture, the progressivism, the leftism, it all started in college campuses with, a lot of the universities had ties to the Communist Chinese Party with, or the Chinese Communist Party with what was it called? I got hit in the head, so I can't remember things now. The Confucius Institute. If y'all remember that, the Confucius Institute, which was a program, it was kind of like a student exchange type of program, but the Confucius Institute chose the textbooks for the students to read, and a lot of times it had to do with Chinese propaganda to get people woke, liberal, that sort of thing. It's been that for a long time. So college campuses have been ground zero for culture in general for a long time. This goes way back to the 60s and all that, So we know that. That's why when I look at this now, it's like, uh-oh. if this is what they're trying to externalize to the rest of the world, at least the rest of the country, then it's going to get really ugly. And I can see them trying to do that, especially on the Israel-Palestine issue, because not only does it tick the ethnic thing, it ticks the religious thing, point, and the political thing. And it actually confuses the political lines a little bit in a way that can mobilize masses. And I say that because the pivot recently, the pivot that I've noticed recently is that a lot of the alt media are staunchly anti-Zionist right now, which, you know, we have expressed anti-Zionist sentiment over the years where, you know, my criticism will be on the political infrastructure or the decisions made within the political infrastructure of Israel, not because they're Jewish or not because, you know, of whatever. It's not because of that stuff that of anti-Semitism or whatever that, you know, they would like to label us as, but more so in the context of just, hey, we're criticizing the actions of, say, Netanyahu, who says we should microchip all of our children. Not down with that, but all of a sudden, if you criticize an Israeli leader, you're anti-Semitic or something, right? So that's always been used as a way, and the Alex Jones types have not been openly anti-Zionist. They just haven't. They would talk about Mossad, you know, Alex Jones, the Mossad, they would talk about the Mossad. That's as far as he would go, and he wouldn't get necessarily into the geopolitics. Well, now, especially now, with October 7th and everything with Gaza and everything, he has to get into it. And because the left, the progressive, the university campuses have picked up the pro-Palestine banner. These are the same folks who are pro-Ukraine and pro-LGBT, the same folks that just, you know, that toe the line of whatever they're told to represent, right? Those folks are all mobilized across college campuses and pro-Palestine, pro-Palestine, pro-Palestine. And it causes, if you are on the right side of the political aisle, it causes you to make a decision, right? You got to say, okay, wait a minute. Are we against the pro-Palestine, which would make us pro-Israel, or are we going to be somewhat pro-Palestine and expose pro-Zionism or you know, be anti-Zionism? And I've noticed a sentiment shift. And this is sentiment based on anecdotally what I've seen. So this is not like based on data or anything, but anecdotally in the alt media, a lot of people have become aware of the Zionist issue. And there is a growing populace of people saying we are anti-Zionist, not anti-Jewish, anti-Zionist. And it's a real, it messes with your mind a little bit, because then those people who were traditionally right-wing, you know, politically, that would be pro-Israel, now they are breaking off and saying, no, we're not pro-Israel, we're against it, we're against sort of the regime behind Israel with the Zionists or Mossad or whatever it is. And then that group somehow may be lumped in with the pro-Palestine group. You know, it gets confusing. It's like, oh my gosh, it's a scramble. It's like a scramble mode thing going on. So I've noticed that taking place in the alt media, and that can change things, because while most people are still pro-Trump and you know, there's still a loud contingent of pro-Israel, which, by the way, the pro-Israel goes right back to the Atlantic article about the Left Behind folks, right? Because that's sort of the target audience. That's the propaganda man for the Left Behind series, and that whole think tank is the Christian who believes in end times prophecies and stuff, you know, people like us. And so, you know, it's important to get them to mobilize in a certain way. And I think for the most part, they still have the Trump vote there. But it is splintering. And with JFK, I've seen different loyalties to JFK, or RFK Jr., I'm sorry. Different people within the alt media be loyal to RFK, so that, you know, it's splitting that. It's very fascinating. It's almost like they want this unity to rise, this populist unity, but they don't necessarily want it to be only as a Republican right-wing thing. They want it to have its own thing so that it can be new or something. It's a very fascinating thing. I don't know what all the detailed agenda entails. Of course, obviously, I'm just a guy on the internet talking about it from afar. But TheGuardian.com here, I want to zoom in a little bit on the violence that erupts at UCLA. That's the headline. Violence erupts at UCLA as counter-protesters attack pro-Palestine camp. Here's where it gets interesting, because you have all these pro-Palestinian people, but violence is breaking out now, and it's interesting to hear about the conditions and the individuals involved. Violent clashes broke out on the campus of the University of California in Los Angeles early on Wednesday morning, that's today, when counter-demonstrators attacked a pro-Palestinian protest encampment. The violence at the Southern California campus came hours after New York City police cleared pro-Palestinian protesters out of an academic building that had been taken over at Columbia University. The chaos started just before midnight when a masked group descended on an encampment that pro-Palestinian protesters had erected on the campus. Anytime there's a masked group that's descending on an encampment, I don't know. I think we're going to come to find out there's just some rowdy college kids, just some rowdy MAGA kids. But it's always suspicious when there's actual violence involved. Aerial footage showed people wielding sticks or poles to attack wooden boards that had been put up as a makeshift barricade to protect the encampment, some holding placards or umbrellas. At least one firework was thrown into the camp. Fights between both groups ensued, with people grappling in fist fights and shoving, kicking, and using sticks to beat one another. At least there were no guns here. At least they're just like, let's settle this mano y mano. No guns, sticks. Let's do it old school. People threw chairs and other objects, and at one point, a group piled on a person on the ground, kicking and beating them with sticks until others pulled them out of the scrum. The LA Times reported that a group of security guards could be seen observing the clashes, but that they did nothing, or they did not intervene. Always fascinating. There are people that can help nearby and they choose not to do anything, whether it's a failure on their part or they were instructed not to. Always interesting. Administrators at the university called in law enforcement officers to stem the violence, which is the worst since counter-protesters who support Israel set up rival protest area near the pro-Palestinian encampment. Quote, horrific acts of violence occurred at the encampment tonight, and we immediately called law enforcement for mutual aid support. It was in California, LA area. They were all up in the defund the police campaign there when a few black men were shot by some white officers. Or maybe I think it might have been even like a Mexican officer. It wasn't even a white officer. But anyway, calling on the police now. They need him now. Quote, the fire department and medical personnel are on the scene. We are sickened by this senseless violence, and it must end. And these photos here are very compelling. This is very much, what you expect to see in the police state. You got all these police officers in a line. They got their helmets on. They got their gear. Some of the counter-protesters began to leave the area around 1:40 a.m. after police in riot gear arrived and formed a line near the campus, the LA Times reported. But officers did not immediately break up the two sets of protesters, and clashes continued. Hours later, broadcast footage showed a police cordon slowly clearing a sensual quad beside the encampment. It was not clear how many people had been injured, nor was it clear who the attackers were. Footage showed mostly male counter-demonstrators, many of them masked, and some apparently older than students. Fed! It's the Fed! It's the Fed!
A lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax. I mean, it's a money-making industry, okay?
Unindicted co-conspirators.
Of course they're older. They're always older than the students. That's the one thing I remember in college. I've told this story before. I'll tell it again. I remember in college, and I did not like all I liked socializing, but some of it just got, when you get into college, you go to a university. I went to University of Irvine, and you think it's like a very academic school. It is, but you're on any college campus. You're a college student. You're a freshman. You're a sophomore. There is debauchery afoot. Okay, I just got to be honest. That's what's going on at these college campuses for the most part, especially these public and these bigger universities. And I remember being at these parties and seeing these guys that are older, like we're 20, 19, 20, 21, 22. And these guys that are like in their 30s or older, dare I say older, that are like showing up at these college parties, and they're, dapping it up with the guys, they're joking, they're the life of the party and stuff. And I remember thinking like, dear Lord, please make sure. And I didn't even believe in God. I wasn't even baptized back then, but I was like, please, Lord, do not let me become one of these people that are hanging out with the college kids, way too old to be hanging out at these parties. It was just kind of depressing to see. I did not want to become that guy, but not saying that that's what this is here, but they appeared older than the students. When you're talking about a college campus, you're talking about a really heated issue, international news carrying the story. There's little details that, if you've been paying attention long enough, seem to suggest that it's not exactly organic. Mostly male counter demonstrators, many of them masked, and some apparently older than students. I don't even know how you would tell if they were masked. You can see the crow's feet on their eyes or something like that. Some yelled pro-Jewish comments at pro-Palestinian protesters, or as pro-Palestinian protesters tried to fight them off. Quote, "They were coming up here and just violently attacking us," said one pro-Palestinian protester, Kaya Shah, a researcher at UCLA. Quote, "I just didn't think they would ever get to this, escalate to this level, where our protest is met by counter-protesters who are violently hurting us, inflicting pain on us when we are not doing anything to them," end quote. The Daily Bruin, a college newspaper, said on X that 4 of its reporters were followed and assaulted. Oh, wow. Writing on X, the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, condemned the violence as, quote, "absolutely abhorrent and inexcusable." Ananya Roy, a geography professor at UCLA, condemned the university over its lack of response to the counter-protesters. Quote, "It gives people impunity to come to our campuses as a rampaging mob," she told the LA Times. "The word is out that they can do this repeatedly and get away with it. I am ashamed of my university." I think this could be overstating the issue or reading too much into it, but it does feel like this whole operation here is meant to significantly diminish and continue to diminish, really, because it's been on a decline of these the power or the influence these major universities have. Because I don't know, I go back and forth about it, because in one way, a lot of people that go through the university systems, Basil went on this big, long rant many episodes ago where he was talking about how a whole generation is disenfranchised because we were promised, and this is my generation too, we were promised these jobs and these careers and all this stuff. Just go to college, get an education. Yeah, you're going to be in debt, but you're going to get the necessary paperwork to get into a job, and you'll be paying off your debt in no time. And then you can start saving up for a house, and, your whole life was planned for you. And that was a lie. It was one big lie. They wanted everybody in debt to get everybody in debt. And the university system has not done the greatest job in creating jobs or opportunities for a generation. So that whole experiment failed. And, but it is a money-making machine. And so, I talked about this a little bit in the article that I will hopefully publish very soon about the whole alt media thing. But an apparatus that is so massive, especially an economic apparatus like the university system that is so big, a whole generation is tied into it. Generations upon generations tied into it. It will not die easily. Some will adapt. Some will, go by the wayside. But I think this is indicative of a massive shift in the pillars of authority when it comes to education, science, all that stuff. It's going to come from a much different source as we move forward here. And I think it's already taken place. You know, I was talking to my wife. We have our children in sort of a charter school type of situation where it's like half homeschool, half in an actual school setting. And nobody in our neighborhood goes to public school here. Nobody that has kids, nobody's in public school. Because, well, I'm in Southern California. Maybe that's why. But nobody's doing public education as far as I know. I haven't met anybody who's like, yeah, we go to public school. No, everybody does their sort of private education around here. So these institutions like UCLA and, you know, even Stanford or Yale, all these big institutions, they're losing money in that they're not getting the kind of people, they're not getting the wealthy people there. They're losing their status, you know, so it's just an interesting move. I can see this becoming more of an issue. And depending on your field, universities might be great. You know, if you're going to be in medicine or a lawyer or something like that, yeah, an education at UCLA might be great, but not for everything. Like you get a literary degree or like a sociology degree from UCLA. I mean, good luck. Good luck finding like a career or placed into some kind of career right away. So anyway, okay, let's continue on here. There's just some more quotes from people complaining about the idea of free speech and yada, 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 the October 7th thing. Late on Tuesday, New York police arrested dozens of pro-Palestinian demonstrators holed up in an academic building in Columbia. So yeah, they shift their attention to Columbia here, sort of pointing out the fact that there's a lot of this going on, a lot of this upheaval going on in college campuses. And again, I think the greater takeaway here is how young people are being instigated to be to mobilize on this particular issue with the Gaza-Israel issue, because again, it ticks all the boxes. It's ethnic, it's religious, it's political. So it's going to obviously have an effect on society. And if this is any precursor to what we can expect with greater society out there, it's not looking good. This issue can lead to much more divisions as we move forward here. As we've already started to see in the alt media world. You got and I was going on a rant about that earlier, but you know, you got your Ben Shapiro's and stuff who were pro-Israel, pro-Zionist, and you got your alt media that is established as that, you know. Then you have your anti-Zionist alt media, which you can call Alex Jones is sort of trying to spearhead that whole thing. It's pro-America type of thing. So yeah, very fascinating times we're living in, disruptive times that we're living in. And let's take a quick break here and do some speak pipe. And then I'll have one more story for you, and then we'll call it a day.
Please leave a message after the tone.
At the tone, please record your message.
Leave a message. Beep.
Message.
Go to canarycrynewstalk.com. On any of the pages at the website, you will see a green tab on the right side or the bottom. You click on that, and it'll give you a little window that allows you to record a message, an audio message through your device of up to 90 seconds. You can leave a pre-show prayer. You can leave a private note. You can leave a public address to the Canarium. You can make a cameo if you're a celebrity, politician, athlete, or deceased mafia members. You can give us boots on the ground reports or even meetup reports. And we'll share it here. We have our first one here is from Rochelle.
God bless Canary Cry. This one's called Line of Thinking. I don't know what to call it. I don't know what it means. He satisfies the answerless question. Don't be led by a compass with no direction. He satisfies by rejection. Don't be led by promises of protection. He gives us a sign. He gives us direction. He gives us some time to erase our line of thinking. He has the answers, he has the guarantees. Bring him your frustration and voided warranties. You're never alone now, never too far down. No valley of decision, no more tinsel town. He made the day, they call him the way. It's true, it started with him and ends inside you. He gives us a sign, he gives us direction, he gives us some time to walk his line of thinking. Stay strong for Jesus.
Thank you very much, Rochelle. Nice to hear from you. Appreciate the song. Much needed to calm my nerves a little bit and lick my wounds. My head hurts. My head hurts from the metal bar that bashed into it. Anyway, thank you very much, Rochelle. Appreciate it. We have another message here from AJ.
Hey guys, Basil, Gons. This is AJ Natsuri. I just subscribed, monthly subscription to support Age of Deceit 4. And I just want to thank you guys for your work. And this is how this is going to go. I need mugs. All right. I need Canary Cry mugs. I need Canary Cry t-shirts. I want all the amenities. All right. I want beginning credit list, name in the beginning of the documentary, and end credit list as well. Thanks, guys. Love ya.
All right. Thanks a lot, AJ. Appreciate it. And thank you for signing up. Yeah. Well, I think, I don't know. I'm not sure what and this is not my department here, so I'm speaking out of term, but I believe these supply droppers do have a mug. The T-shirt council has a T-shirt, or a few T-shirts now. And I don't know how that works with the focus group. Maybe Basil had something in mind. Maybe Sir Ike has something squared up, but yeah, I don't know what to say to that part. But in terms of the film, I would love to put just your name, AJ, right at the top. But I think what I'm going to do is, I think I do already have the produced by Canary Cry Radio / News Talk producers. I can't remember the exact language I have there, but I have the general, or brought to you by Canary Cry producers. I have that at the top, and then all the individual names will be listed at the end credits, because I can't go through all the names at the beginning. It's kind of interesting. Really, really old shows used to do that. They used to do all the credits up front, and then you watch the show, like an old-timey thing. But in the instance of Age of Deceit 4, it's a general thank you to all the producers, and then the specific names for the focus group there at the end. Yeah, it's just how the film is put together. So sorry about that, AJ. I hope it doesn't burst your bubble there. But, so there you go. And I'll get back to you. We will get back to you on the other stuff as we learn more, as I learn more anyway. I'm sure there's something out there that's already established that I don't know about, because I don't get to know everything, folks. I don't hear everything. I don't know everything that's going on back here. All right. We have one more message from Lily of the Canarium.
Basil and Gons, bless you guys in your ministry. It's Lily of the Valley here, and it's been a while since there's been a meetup in East Texas, so I want to get one on the calendar for Saturday, May 18th, somewhere near Tyler, Texas. I will hope to have a more firm location by next Wednesday's show, but if anybody wants to RSVP or suggest somewhere, they can reach me at lilyofthecanarium@yahoo.com. That's LILYOFTHECANARIUM. Thank you, guys.
All right. Let's see if this jingle works. Let me see here.
This is fun!
Yeah, if you go to canarycrymeetups.com, we haven't been talking enough about the meetups because the last stuff was canceled. Got to update that page. We kind of fell off on some of that. It's hard to maintain all the stuff we got going on here. Lots of plates were spinning. But Yeah, I will try to put that on the website there. Contact Lily of the Canarium at yahoo.com to learn more. I think he said 18th of May. And let's see. 18th of May is Armed Forces Day. It's a Saturday. It's the first GMO food approved by the FDA in 1994. So that's a 30-year anniversary for GMOs. That'll be a great theme for the meetup. But there you go. Contact Lily of the Canarium at yahoo.com. And more meetups. We need more meetups, especially as the summer comes around. I think it's a great time to meet some fellow Canarians in your area. So thank you for that. And I think that's it for the audio messages right now. Yep, that's it. Let's do our last story and then get on out of here.
It's cold, Basil. It's cold. Antarctica, go first. It's a snowstorm. Antarctica.
Ice scientists are penguins.
Antarctica, they're opening the abyss.
So a new discovery.
Antarctica.
Penguins.
Ah, yes, the penguins. The polar birds. According to ZMEScience.com, over 90% of polar birds have microplastics in them. We knew microplastics pollution was a problem, but it's a bigger problem than we thought. All right. It's a bigger problem than we thought. And they have an image here. It's got all kinds of birds, different types of birds and penguins. And it shows sort of a graph of where they are on the map and how there's microplastics in all of them. Plastic is virtually everywhere on Earth, from the tallest mountain to the deepest ocean, from the polar regions to inside our bodies. There's no escaping it anymore. Although plastic pollution is far from a new problem, the sheer extent of microplastic pollution has only recently come into the spotlight. Plastic pollution is typically split into larger microplastics over 5 centimeters, microplastics 0.1, I think that's nanometer to 5 millimeters, and nanoplastics less than 0.1 nanometer. The smaller the plastic, vaster the distances it travels from its source. This means that small plastic pieces are far more pervasive than bigger ones, and it's these small pieces that are more likely to be ingested by animals. We've seen the striking photos of birds ingesting plastic pieces and suffering from this, but the smaller pieces are harder to spot. That's why they went undiscovered for so long. But small pieces of plastic can also accumulate over time, and the damage that they do is harder to assess. With this in mind, PhD researcher Davide Torozzi and Professor Massimiliano Scalici of Rome Tre University, Italy, embarked on a project to summarize 40 years of research into seabird ingestion of microplastics. They analyzed data starting in 1983. Hey, the year I was born. And coming to the present day, it was a study of studies that put together a collection of bird sample data recorded over this period. Overall, they gathered the data of over 1,100 samples, including excrement, regurgitation, and food from crop pouches that some birds use to temporarily store food. Most of the samples were pellets. They found clear evidence that 13 species of polar seabirds, both around the Arctic and Antarctic, had consumed microplastics. Species like little auks, king penguin, great shearwaters, and Adelie penguins all showed traces of ingested microplastics. It wasn't just a few individuals either. The vast majority of birds had plastics inside them. A whopping 97% of Antarctic birds had plastics in them, as did 90% of Arctic birds. An average of 7.2 and 1.1 plastic pieces were found in the Antarctic and Arctic birds, respectively. However, some birds had way more pieces than that. The median number, average median, of plastic pieces was 31.5 and 35, respectively. It wasn't just one piece of plastic either. The team discovered 14 types of plastic inside birds. Yeah, they didn't get the memo. Birds aren't real. Birds are government drones. Remember? They're basically plastic drones for the government now. The most common one was, and they list a bunch of different types of plastics. And then they talk about climate change. Like, climate change, another reason why the plastic issue is a problem. Ultimately, protecting the polar region and their inhabitants requires concerted efforts from individuals, industries, and governments worldwide, united in the commitment to preserving the vital parts of our planet for future generations. So, yeah. You know, first of all, selfishly, as a Canary Cry show podcast with a bird theme, I believe this is, again, a direct hit on the Canarium. They want to call us out. They want with microplastics. But on a more, a little bit more serious note, I would say, there is something, you know, when you look at the whole CRISPR conversation where we started with earlier in this episode, there are theories out there on how CRISPR can help create some kind of organism or biological organism that could suck up the microplastics. So right now, you know, the current status of CRISPR, allegedly, what they tell us anyway, it's hard to, you know, break down or grab the microplastics and take it out of your body. But there are ideas or theories or, you know, theories of how to use CRISPR to create biodegradable alternatives, you know, so you don't use any more plastic. That's one way of doing things. But also using it to create some kind of monitoring situation where, you know, some genes are edited to keep track of microplastics so that, you know, if you're getting high in microplastics, you can, I don't know, move yourself away or something like that. I don't know. But, yeah, there are theories and ideas where engineers can use CRISPR to engineer blobs, you know, like micro or like bio blobs, that just, I don't know, sit around and, you know, kind of like, what's the fish that eat on your feet, or were they leeches or something that clean your feet because they eat all that dead skin off? I forget what they're called, but kind of like that. But you make it sort of not sentient. That's not the right word. Synthetic, like a synthetic biological creature. They already have the robot doing pollination. So, you know, the next level of this is gene edited or gene fabricated or genetically created organisms, you know, where all their only job is to suck up the microplastics in some kind of environment. I don't know. These are things, and, you know, or genetically engineer plants to suck up all the microplastics, because they do that too. So these are just some ideas how CRISPR can come in and change the game once again. But it all seems like an excuse. Once again, we're in the days of Noah, folks, which means the Lego blocks of creation are going to be tampered with. And that seems to bring about judgment and what's the word I'm looking for? I must have gotten hit harder than I thought. The word intervention. That's the theistic intervention in such days. There you go. All right. I'll wrap it up here. Thank you to all the producers of your time, talent, and treasure, especially those of your time.
Timestamp. It's hard work. Timestamp.
We want to thank the time stampers in particular, doing all the timestamps for every episode. Last episode, I believe it was Morgan E. doing the timestamps. Appreciate you. Appreciate Jade Bouncers and doing it on the other episodes and facilitating some of that. We got the Clippies that we're supposed to thank.
Flippy. Flippy on those videos. Thanks.
Thank you to the Clippies. And, you know, if anything, the last few episodes that I've had to be solo, it's really it's been humbling for me to realize how big the show has gotten, to the point where it's like I don't even know all the stuff that goes on to make a show happen. I only know what I know to get the show going on any particular day, but also just all the extra stuff that producers do in the background to make things happen, whether it is timestamps or making clips, and all the things that we have yet to do. It just seems like there's so much to do, if we want to get on other social media platforms with clips or whatever it might be. I don't know. It takes a team effort. We can't sit here, or I can't sit here personally and do all those things as much as I want to. So it is a team effort, and it's gotten to that point where it takes a village, as they say. The Canary village is on the move. All right. Well, one thing you can do if you're just a listener, you want to produce the show in a small way, in an unofficial way, it's to share the show, share it with friends and family. And there are various theories on how you might do that. It's laid out on every episode. I will not attempt to come up with any old way today, but the way we do it around here, we find somebody, we find a target, we walk right up to him, we grab him by the cage, and then we shake it.
The end of the world occurred pretty much as we had predicted.
I want to shake things up, stir up some controversy, rattle a few cages. Hey, stop that! Don't ever silence me. I'm the last angry man, a crusader for the little guy. Leave the bird alone. Never. Rattle a few cages. Rattle a few cages.
The human race will have every opportunity to improve.
And if they don't?
Ask Noah.
Yep. Ask Noah. All right. Hope everybody had a great May Day. A great razzle dazzle basil day. And I'm sure Adam Weishaupt is thrilled that the world still celebrates the Illuminatus. Oh, I need it louder. Okay. All right. Man, I can't promise anything for Friday. I would love to publish something on Friday. But if I can, I will. I will promise you that I can. If I can, I will. Otherwise, we will be back Monday, and I believe Basil will be back Monday. So until then, folks, thank you very much. Appreciate all of you. Love you all. God bless. And always remember to think outside the cage.
This is the way. Armageddon's on the way. This is the United States of America, for God's sake. We're all gonna die. We will hunt you down and make you pay. Give me a break.
Remember, reality is an illusion. The universe is a hologram. Buy gold. Buy!
Deconstruction and analyze. Canary cry, news talk. Exposing the lies. Let the glory of Christ shine. With no place to hide. Like a new age neophyte, running under cover of the dark of night. But the truth will expose with light. Two brothers, Basil and Guns podcast. corporate news reporting. They're gonna show you how they're distorting the truth into lies. Like the new age neophyte, running under cover of the dark of night. But the truth will expose with lies.
Fun fact, I believe it was another fun fact. Fun fact. Another fun fact.
Brings me back to my Screamo days.
We will hunt you down and make you pay.
You're moving up with lots of charm. Come on, man, you're just an arm. Whoa. Hey, Flippy, please don't take my girl. Flippy, don't take my girl. Hey, Flippy, please don't take my girl now. Please don't take my girl. I'm history. You're nuts and bolts. Perhaps 33 megavolts. Whoa. Hey, Flippy, please don't take my girl. Flippy, don't take my girl. Hey, Flippy, please don't take my girl now. Enslave my kids and bug a new career. Don't you take her, it's not the year. Hey, Flippy, please don't take my girl. Flippy, don't take my girl. Hey, Flippy, please don't take my girl now. Hey, Flippy, please don't take my girl. Flippy, don't take my girl. Hey, Flippy, please don't take my girl
And a resounding baka flies through the air across the world. Why are you screaming like a wild bird?
Rattle their cage. They have a lot of people screaming randomly. Why don't you shout? Their call out. They have a lot of people screaming randomly.
Go ahead and
Why don't you shout?
Why are you screaming like a wild bird?
The deep state and the swamp. Swamp the deep state. Swamp the deep state. Swamp. So they're going to meet the deep state. What? They like Taylor Swift. The deep state is saving us from Armageddon, they say. Deep state means any government worker. That's the deep state. When we hear deep state, instead of recoiling, we should rally. Deep state. better. Thank you, Deep State. This is the most magnificent.
When the news of the day gets to feeling like a maze, it's okay, don't be afraid if you don't know what to say. Canary, cry awaits. When your brain's in a haze on a headline days, come on, I head my way, I can help you out the cage. Canary, cry awaits. Canary, cry awaits. Oh, canary, cry awaits. Oh, the world's changing every day, each and every way you turn, there's another thing to learn. Reading in between the lines, thanking Jesus for our lives, and nice to see His glory shining like the sun. Run the race until it's done. Come on, everyone. Canary, cry aways. Oh, canary, cry aways. When your brain's in a haze and the headline days, come on, I had my way, I can help you out the cage. Canary, cry away.
Let's invite some dudes over and fellowship tonight.
Bye. I'm out of here. Bye.
Value for value. We take no money from corporations, commies, or cartels.
Canary cry, that's support.